Hey guys, Macqo here, and today I would like to talk about one of the best platformers created in the early 2000s, one of the games that has put Ubisoft on the map of AAA game devs at that time, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time was a platforming game created in 2003 by, like I mentioned, Ubisoft, and was at its core a platformer with some elements of puzzles and combat. For its time, maybe it wasn't revolutionary, but it was definitely a solid game that could be enjoyed by many players. I've played this title when I was a kid, and I think I've given up on it after first mini-boss fight, because I could not figure out why I could not kill the boss. But now, years later, it's time for me to finally play through this game and tell you whether, in my opinion, it is still worth playing or not. But before we get to the video, I would like to thank everyone who's watched my past videos and subscribed. The channel has hit over 100 subs. I honestly did not expect so much support. What I can tell you is that I'll try to put out more videos and we'll see where we go from there. It would be great to hit 200 subs, so I guess that's the next goal? Anyway, as always, if you'll enjoy the video, please do leave a like, a sub, comment down below, and let's get on with the material. So, Sands of Time. I will start off by talking about the story, but this time I shan't spoil as much because there is not that much story to talk about. And most of the storyline for this reboot I think I'll save for when I'll play through The Warrior Within and the Two Thrones games. But the basics go as follows. The prince and his father, Shahraman, travel through India to visit Sultan of Azad. Along the way, they are persuaded by the vizier of a local Maharaja to attack the Maharaja's palace in exchange for the opportunity to choose some loot from the castle. The vizier wanted to obtain the Dagger of Time in order to prevent his own death, but Shahraman and the prince stood in his way, as the prince wanted the dagger as spoils of war because he was the one who obtained the dagger, while Shahraman wanted to take the Sands of Time as a gift for Sultan of Azad. After winning the battle and arriving in Azad, the Sands of Time are presented to the Sultan. Then the vizier manages to outsmart everyone and persuade the prince to stab the dagger into the hourglass, thus releasing the Sands of Time and turning everyone into monsters and destroying the palace. After that, the whole plot of the game revolves around Prince and Farah, the daughter of the Maharaja whose castle was attacked. Farah seems to know a lot about what the sands are and what are you supposed to do with them. They're trying to find the hourglass to stab the dagger back into it, on the presumption that this will turn back the time to before the release of sands. And that is what I think is enough of the plot, to not spoil the entire thing, of course. Although, one more interesting thing about the story itself, or the way it's being told. The whole story is narrated by the prince, as he is retelling this entire story to someone off screen. Sometimes you can even get his comments on the events as they go, like him saying that the story didn't go the way we did it in the game, when, for instance, we fall to our death or get stabbed to death by enemies.
Wait. That's not how it happened. Now where...
Okay, enough of the story. Now let's just talk about the gameplay. And I'll start off by saying that Prince of Persia has one of the best tutorials for a game that I've seen. But you might think, well, what do I mean by that? Well, as a platformer, Prince of Persia focuses mostly on, you guessed it, traversal and platforming. And the tutorial presents that aspect of the game really well. In the tutorial, you are told how the basic mechanics would work, such as running along the walls, jumping across chasms, etc. But as the tutorial keeps on going, you are being introduced to new mechanics, like dodging traps, ledges that you can shimmy across, and every time you learn a new mechanic, you do it first in a room in full isolation. It's just the one thing that you need to do, but then afterwards, almost instantly, you'll be either required to be able to combine the mechanic you just learned with the mechanics that you have already known, or you'll be introduced to a new mechanic, and then after this one is shown, you'll be expected to be able to combine them together. For instance, wall running and shimmying across ledges. At first you are shown how to wall run. Then you run across a couple of walls to get the hang of the mechanic. Later on you'll learn how to shimmy on the aforementioned ledges. And then in the room after you learn that, you'd see that you first need to wall run across, and at the end of the run you'd grab the ledge on the same side of the wall. Boom! Now you've learned that you can combine these two movement techniques together. And then, in the room after, you'd see that you need to wall run, and at the end, you need to jump to the opposite wall to grab a ledge there. Boom! Stacking mechanics. Honestly, I think I'll make a separate video on how tutorials should be made in video games and how these games should be built from that. But for now, just please do note that this is a great way to introduce a player not only to the complexity of the game, but this also makes them specifically look around for these types of solutions. And I would say that stacking the mechanics for traversal are the strongest point in Prince of Persia. I must say that platforming here feels really good. Most of the time it is pretty obvious what you should do, but as long as it is actually fun completing these challenges, I'd say it's all good. Also, the game implements 2 additional views. Outside of the typical camera that's either locked behind your character or at a certain angle, you can also press Q to enter panoramic camera mode that shows you most of the area where the environmental puzzle takes place. And if you are unsure if there's anything above you or something, you can press F to enter first-person view. I think it's really cool that you get additional camera views that let you look at the puzzle from a different perspective while you're figuring it out. So now let's talk about the main mechanic of the game that's being advertised, the main thing that you focus around the whole plot. The ability to rewind time. This ability is something that kind of helps you during platforming sections where you may sometimes miss the jump. Instead of restarting from a checkpoint, you can just hold the rewind button and go back several seconds to retry what you wanted to do. Outside of that, the rewind time ability is not really used in any more creative way during the platforming. In fact, if you're really good at the game, you might not even need to rewind time almost at all. But the time powers of the dagger don't stop there. As the name suggests, the Dagger of Time is also good at stabbing, so let's talk about combat. The combat in this installment of Prince of Persia is very lackluster. It's serviceable, it's not bad by any means, it's just kind of lackluster. There's one combo for your main weapon, you can block enemies' attacks, you can dodge, you can rewind time mid-combat, you can vault over enemies to attack them. You can also bounce off the walls to dive and attack an enemy that way. Now, because all enemies are sand zombies, you need to kill them using the dagger to make them actually disappear, otherwise after they are knocked down they will just come back to life. So the way that combat would work would be you attack the enemies until you knock them down, and then you stab them with your dagger, rinse, repeat. The only thing that changes up is the type of enemies, but even they are very samey. The only difference between them is that some of them will block attacks from the front, some of them don't let you vault over, and some of them block other types of attacks. All in all, I figured that the best and fastest way to finish the combat is to go next to a wall and then bounce off the wall and dive onto an enemy, knock it down instantly, stab, rinse, repeat, except for like one enemy type who needs to be vaulted over instead. And it will work every time. So, on top of the basic combat stuff, being able to suck out the sands out of the enemies to actually kill them and the ability to rewind time, well, on top of all that, you also unlock some additional dagger abilities as you fight. You may notice that right next to the hourglass of sand that indicates your ability to rewind time, there's a little white bar. If you stab an enemy with a dagger while he is not downed, the enemy will be frozen in time and you can just kill him with a sword, and that will eat up one white bar. You can also slow down time to make things easier for you, but the slowdown also affects the player, so it feels kind of useless. You don't even really use it in platforming. And then, if you have all the white bars you can have filled out, and you press block plus rewind time, you enter something like super stop time, where every enemy freezes and you can directionally dash towards an enemy and kill every single one that pops up in 2 hits. I'd say that this is an important ability because combat in this game, while it is simple, it has one very major problem. While I said it feels lackluster, it still is serviceable, and if you were able to just have the game with a few combat encounters the way combat is currently, I wouldn't even bat an eye. But the problem with the combat is that these sections are so long. My god, the amount of time I spent just clearing wave after wave of enemies, popping up wondering when I will be done, so I can move on to the puzzles and platforming is insane. I think Ubisoft had to somehow pad out the game because with how long these encounters are, no shot they thought that this is going to be fun. And because of that, the aforementioned super stop time is important. If you have the full sound gauge of whatever you want to call it, you can just get rid of as many enemies instantly as you can to speed up the process. But not gonna lie, I would have enjoyed the game more if the combat was happening more often, but it was shorter. Like, let's say 2 to 3 waves of enemies instead of having to deal with like 6 to 7 waves per combat encounter. And also, while I'm on the complaining path right now, 3 more nitpicks. The first one, the first mini-boss you encounter, the way you beat him is not that obvious. There isn't any indication during the intro cinematic to show you what you are supposed to actually do. He keeps on blocking your attacks and knocking you down when you try to vault over him, making him impossible to kill. The solution is literally to keep Farah alive and get rid of every other enemy, and then you can kill the boss. It took me a bunch of tries to figure that one out, because I legit thought that there would be some gimmick to that fight, but no, not really, you just brute force your way through. Oh yeah, but there's one thing that's very cool after combat. Ubisoft is actually promoting healthy lifestyle in this game, because if you take damage, you heal by drinking water, so, you know, stay hydrated, my friends. The second nitpick would be the voice acting. While it is not terrible, I would say that most of the time it's just fine, because you spend a lot of time in-game with Farah, but you just constantly hear her yelling, "Here I am," whenever she would go somewhere and do something. It did start getting on my nerves at some point. And the third one would be audio mixing. Yeah, myself complaining about audio mixing, I know, but the game does not really tell you this, but how loud you can hear a character is based not on your character's proximity to the other one, it's based on how far away the camera is from the character. So sometimes you can barely hear the conversations between the characters, and sometimes you can hear them just fine. Outside of that, I'd say that the game is really fun. The puzzles get more and more complex the further you go into the game, and that makes it really fun. Also, the save points are very frequent. Essentially, after every big puzzle room or a couple of smaller platforming sections, you'd get a save point. And on the topic of save points, there's something I'm torn on, and I'd like to hear you guys' opinion on it in the comments. See, whenever you go to a save point, you get a sequence of prints kind of peeking into the future, and then there's 2 things that happen in there. The first one is Prince seeing his movements in the upcoming puzzle, giving you hints on what is supposed to happen next. And the second one is some small snippets of the future of some things that will happen story-wise. And after you're done saving, you can always enter the save point again to rewatch the vision if you're stuck, let's say. But while I think that the visions of the future that refer to the story are fine and cool, it makes Prince more suspicious about certain things, about what's to come, because these visions are not 100% obvious, you don't see the whole picture. They're just snippets taken and mixed together. But my problem isn't with them. My problem actually lies with the vision that shows you movements regarding puzzles. While they never show you how to solve any puzzle 100%, the game kind of shows you what you're supposed to do next, and I think that this could be cool as a hint when the player is stuck. Seeing it happen before you enter the room kind of spoils the puzzle. So yeah, what do you think about it? Drop a comment down below. Okay, I think I've touched on most of the points regarding the game. There's like one last thing that at the same time is a pain point for me, but also something that I do appreciate. You get the coolest platforming sequences at the end of the game, somewhere around the 90% completion mark. And that is great and kinda bad at the same time. The puzzles at the end require you to understand every single aspect of platforming shown in the game and make you apply multiple skills simultaneously back to back to back. But at the same time, I feel like the game could use this type of difficult puzzles a little bit earlier, maybe instead of the padded out combat. Overall, it took me about 6 to 8 hours to finish the whole game. I have about 3 hours more in it because I forgot that I alt-tabbed and never closed the game at time. And I got stuck on a couple of puzzles, but I generally had a lot of fun. Definitely most of this fun came from platforming, but like I said, combat was not terrible, and if these encounters were just shorter, it would have been way better. But still, I would say that this is a very solid game. This, Rayman, and the Tom Clancy's game series kind of built Ubisoft up to become one of the greatest game companies at the time. In fact, if Prince of Persia didn't happen, we would have never gotten the original Assassin's Creed games, but that's a story for when I'll be playing through Assassin's Creed 1. Anyway, I can genuinely recommend this game to anyone who enjoys platforming. I think I'll just start giving out some marks of approval or disapproval at the end to show whether I like the game or not, but I also encourage you to make your own decisions based on what you've seen. So I'll give this game the first Macqo's mark of approval. And that's about it for this video. I think that while I'll be working on Gothic 2, I'll also play a bit of Battlefield 6 Beta, another game from the series that I grew up with, and I'll give you some opinions on it when I'll be done. So, thank you all for watching. If you liked it, please do leave a like, leave a sub, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!